Last week, we reported on a story about racism and the coronavirus. In the city of Guangzhou in southern China, hundreds of African residents, students, and visitors have been evicted from their homes and apartments and hotels by Chinese officials over misplaced and racist fears that African people are more likely to test positive for coronavirus. Already the target of racial discrimination, these innocent people have been left to sleep outside on the streets. Instead of cleaning up this fucking mess from the start, the city of Guangzhou dug themselves into an even deeper hole as businesses and bars started to hop onto this racist train from hell. Take, for instance, this McDonald's in Guangzhou that had this laminated sign posted at the door which read, "We've been informed that from now on, black people are not allowed to enter the restaurant. For the sake of your health, consciously notify the local police for medical isolation. Please understand the inconvenience caused." So let me get this straight. You want African residents, who were totally innocent, by the way, to reach out to the police, the same police that evicted them from their homes in the first place? Or do you mean this police?
You see, they cannot give us house. They cannot give us hotel. They cannot provide a place we can stay.
On top of being a shitty, racist thing in and of itself, it's even more ironic when you consider the fact that Asians outside of Asia are being racially discriminated against at unprecedented levels. It's often said by edgy edgelords and racist 13-year-olds, which are kind of the same thing, that racial stereotypes exist because there's some nugget of truth. When in reality, most racial stereotypes exist because of a central lie. And in this case, the lie started on Chinese social media platforms like WeChat and Weibo, where some Chinese people misinterpreted warnings provided by the Chinese government about important cases. Now, these important cases were classified as Chinese citizens who traveled outside of the country and came back. But the way it was understood on social media was that foreigners were the problem. As you probably already know, based on the local racism in your neck of the woods, whenever someone points the finger at foreigners, it's usually a dog whistle for a particular ethnic minority group that they don't like. In this case, in the case of Guangzhou, that meant African residents, especially African foreigners. In response to this outbreak of racial discrimination turned to 11, African leaders have tried to reach out to Chinese leaders to bring attention to this crisis. And in return, many Chinese officials have waved off these concerns in the most backhanded, sidestepping way.
First of all, China-African relations are very, very solid. And for some politicians in the United States to accuse China of practicing racial discrimination against Africans is really a fallacy. We all know how poorly and terribly have been the racial discriminations practiced by the United States against African Americans, and we call for a stop to such racial discrimination.
China's excuse so far boils down to the United States is using the race card, and we've always been in alliance with Africa. America should stop race baiting when they have their own history with anti-Blackness to deal with. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it feels good to hear another politician call out America's racism, but it still doesn't excuse the racism going on in China. This whataboutism doesn't work. And I say that because, again, this is an ongoing problem. Racism has been a problem in Guangzhou, has been a problem in China. I'm glad that we can talk about the racism going on in Guangzhou, and I hope that we can continue to shine a spotlight on what's happening to Africans during the coronavirus, but we should also use this as a window of opportunity to talk about the investments and the new infrastructure China is doing in Africa under the Belt and Road Initiative. We should talk about the normalization of blackface in Chinese media and the everyday experiences with racism that Africans endure when they are on Chinese soil.
So on an official level, China has great relations with Africa. They want good relations with Africa. on a person-to-person level, a lot of Chinese, many, I'm not saying 100%, but many still discriminate against Africans. They see Africans as inferior. If a black person like myself, who's from the United States and speaks English, wants to go teach English in China, we would be turned away because we're not white. They think an English teacher should be white. They're discriminated against in many different ways. African students are discriminated against. They talk about it. Africans in general are seen as criminals. I've gone to Guangzhou, to the area that they call Little Africa or Chocolate City. Africans have told me that they're constantly stopped and harassed for their ID and for their passports. It's very hard for them to rent places. So on a person-to-person level, there is a lot of discrimination. When you bring this topic up to Chinese officials, I'm afraid, and I'm sorry, Victor, but the answer is always, yes, but you have discrimination in the United States too. So it's always kind of a whataboutism. What about your discrimination against the blacks in the United States?
Like all topics that we discuss on this page, this one is ongoing. I know many of you have reached out in hopes that I'd continue covering this story, and to that I will say, hell yeah. And if you are an African living in Guangzhou and you'd like to talk and share your experiences, I'd love to have you on the show to share your story. In the meantime, keep me posted, keep me updated, and we'll try to, do a little update like this every week, right? Everyone, I love you, I love you, I love you. Take care out there. Stay safe. Wear a mask. Stay indoors.